good to have you coming down the road with us. I'm Joel Heitkamp, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour. We got a lot of things we're going to talk about today. We're going to get a chance to talk about QAnon. That's one of the subjects that, quite frankly, I think a lot of people in America don't know, don't understand. Obviously, it's been at the center of attention for many, many people. But when it gets right down to the heart and soul of it, what is QAnon? We're going to get to it. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about health coverage. We're going to talk about health coverage for everyone. In fact, we're going to talk about health coverage for the spouse of a fallen police officer, for example. That spouse should have health insurance throughout the rest of her life or his life if that police officer falls in the line of duty. But first, today on my radio show, and I know we do this sometimes as we go down the road, but when there's a really good interview and really something that pertains to the news of the day, we're going to share it with you. We are. So this played on News and Views. And what this was all about was Jana Myrdal. Think about Edinburgh. Think about Grafton. That's the area she's from. They call it District 10. She serves in the state Senate in the North Dakota legislature. And she got through, the bill passed, a bill that allows schools to put the 10 Commandments in that classroom. So basically, the 10 Commandments go back in that classroom. You know what? This is controversial. I think it's unconstitutional. I think we're going to end up in court. But she deserves her say. So take a listen to what I heard today on the radio. I have had Jana Myrdal, who is a very conservative member of the North Dakota State Senate, on this show before. We disagree on a lot of things. We do. I would not have voted for her bill, 2308, which is a bill that empowers schools to put the 10 Commandments in their classroom. I wouldn't have voted for it, and I wouldn't have voted for it because I think it's going to be unconstitutional. I think we're going to end up in a lawsuit for a lot of different reasons. But you know what? When I called her, or when Abby gave her a holler and said, will you come on the show? She did. She said yes, and I respect that immensely. Let's get to her. Senator Myrdal, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, absolutely, Joel. And, I'm sitting in the Senate conference room, and right across from me is a picture of a young Joel Heitkamp when he was in the Senate. So.
don't throw any eggs at him, okay? Don't.
No, I never would.
Okay.
I never would. And I appreciate you having me on. I just stepped out of Ag Committee. We're talking soil conservation this morning, but
okay.
Happy to be on.
Okay, let's talk about it. 2308. A lot of people, we've been talking about the 10 Commandments bill. Let's make sure they understand what you feel it does. Go ahead and tell them, Senator Myrdal.
Well, I tell you what, I sat on Judiciary here now. I'm on my third session, and whether it's Judiciary or Human Services, I think we all agree that we're making more and more laws because of horrific things that we hear. We just, like in Judiciary, sex crimes against children, and it's just expansion of laws because of a breakdown and the moral fiber of our culture. And I think we all see that, whether it's theft, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's violence that we see across the nation as well, honestly. And I've said for a long time, why aren't we willing to go kind of back up to the dike where it started leaking? Something started leaking. And I've done some research, and everybody knows I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, but, some of the research tells me that one example is within 15 years of taking prayer and 10 Commandments out of schools, Joe, 553% of cases of women under 14, young women under 14 being pregnant. I can give you a 300% increase in divorces. A lot of those things, and I think there's a direct correlation. And the 10 Commandments to me is a historical document, Joe. There wasn't even a word called Christian for thousands of years. After, this is a Jewish document. Every religion respects this, have respected it for thousands of years. I don't see it as offensive. I think murder is offensive. I think reading "Thou shalt not murder" is not offensive. So, and as far as lawsuits go, there's times as lawmakers that we have to take that step, and I think that step is now.
Have you, when you went up to the process, and as you pointed out, I went through it as well. When you went up to Legislative Council, did they, and for those who don't know, Senator Myrdal and I used a place called Legislative Council. They're lawyers and they're accountants, and they help you draft the bills. Did they tell you whether or not this would pass the constitutional muster? Did they say that this would be found to be unconstitutional, Senator Myrdal?
Well, in state, it's not unconstitutional. And the interesting thing with that is, we have the Establishment Clause, but which is a federal law, and then the Supreme Court has looked at this many, many times. The kind of strange thing about it, if you go to the Supreme Court, Joel, I'm sure you've been there too. It's a fantastic experience in Washington, D.C. On the doors, when you walk in, there's 10 Commandments. Above the head of the justices, there are the 10 Commandments. And around the whole rotunda is Moses and the 10 Commandments. And that's what they based everything on, fundamental moral laws, if you would call them. So that they can sit, I think the latest they visited this was in the 80s. But there's kind of muddied waters there, because some things they say, yes, it can stand. Other places they say, no, it can't stand. But I want people to know they're listening that we did not establish anything or mandate anything in this bill. This just says that we permit a school board in any district whatsoever, maybe Cavalier somewhere they'd do it, maybe in Cass County they wouldn't, but it's up to local control. And you may post them, and you may not fear reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. That's part of the thing, too. And boy, do we ever need that right now.
Senator Myrdal, should have it been broader then, though? I mean, you could have people in that classroom of different faiths than yours and mine. Should they been allowed to post the Quran, for example? Should they? Well,
I tell you what, I firmly believe that the Ten Commandments it's a historical document. It's a Jewish document. It's not a Christian alone document at all. It's just 10 rules of good living. So,
but you didn't answer my question. It's certainly not a Muslim document, and it's certainly not a document of Islam. I mean, should they then be able to make that same argument that a document that is this important to you and I as Christians, that they then should be able to post their document?
Well, they could. I mean, if somebody wants to put that forward, and if the school board decides to do that,
would you vote? Would you vote for that?
It depends on how it was listed and what it was. If it fits our Constitution, because I think that the separation of church and state, number one, is not in any of our founding documents. That was a letter that Jefferson wrote to a pastor who was concerned that the government would start a government religion, like I grew up there in Norway, Lutheran or the Anglican Church of England that they had left behind. That's where that argument comes in. And so we drank that Kool-Aid for way too long. That's not in the funding documents. If there was a Muslim statement of some kind, that would not be offensive to Christianity, just like the Ten Commandments are not offensive to Muslims. It's for thousands of years they've accepted the same because it doesn't mention Jesus Christ. It is just fundamental historical document that is like the foundation of moral living.
Well, let me say this. I grew up in the Ten Commandments were in the classroom, and believe me, I'm still here. So I'm not trying to pretend that this is life or death. I also am a Catholic, so I know what catechism was. I think it's going to be found to be unconstitutional, and it's going to be money spent that didn't need to be spent. But that being said, I think that oftentimes when discussions are taking place on the Ten Commandments, people don't. You hear of the Ten Commandments, you don't know what's in the Ten Commandments. You mentioned it from a historical standpoint that it's that document. So in order, and you always know that you're not going to have any problem with this, quite frankly, like I would. But make sure people know what are the Ten Commandments. Give them the Ten Commandments in order so they know them, Senator.
Oh, boy. If I'm going to recite that for you, it'll take a while because
I got time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. I got to get back to the Ag Committee. But let's go over a few of them. First one is thou shalt have no other God but me. That mentions God, so that could be anything. The key ones, I think, that would be important for our children to once again see and learn from, or by reading them, is things that people seem to think is offensive. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not commit adultery. What's more offensive? Adultery or not committing adultery? Thou shalt not lie. Is that offensive, or is deceit, somebody lying to you, offensive? Those are the things that I want to talk about.
Those are some of the ones
that will honor their mother and father.
But those are the ones that I probably would have remembered too. But the point being that they're in the classroom, and I think that many people act as though they can recite the Ten Commandments, and they can't. This isn't a long document to be able to recite, with all due respect, Senator Myrdal. And so to be able to rattle these off, it would seem to me that if you're advocating for them, and I hope whoever talks to you again about this, you can do what I
Okay,
asked you to do.
Absolutely, I probably
Yeah.
can, but
Okay.
I think it's kind of a game. I think it's kind of a game that you're asking me that. So
Well,
I think
wait
the
a
important
second
thing
now.
is
That
this.
isn't fair.
No, it is.
Senator, no, that
Oh,
isn't
yeah,
fair.
yeah.
You're telling
because we're
people that
talking
they
about-
need to post the 10 Commandments, and I asked you to recite
Yep.
them, and you can't. That isn't a game. You're saying that these
Yeah,
are
it is a game.
important enough to be in a
Yep.
classroom, and that
And so
it
is the
will
Pledge of
change our
Allegiance.
society. And
Yep.
and I'm not sitting there making a debate on that as much as what I'm saying. Okay, what are we putting in the classroom then?
We're putting historical documents, just like we put tons of historical documents all over the place. We do Shakespeare. We do all kinds of things that have opinions and things. And why is this harmful to put it in? And if I recited them to you, I'm going to recite it the way I remember them. And then we're going to have 10 people who email, well, that's not how they're in my Methodist or my Baptist or my Catholic or my whatever. And that was a debate on the floor yesterday that I thought was a kind of a laughable debate, actually, like which version of the Ten Commandments. And I'm like, seriously, we're gonna play that game? Which version? Like, thou shalt not kill, or you shall not kill, or you shall not murder. I could go through all of them, and somebody out there is going to say, "Oh my gosh, she didn't say it the exact way." So that's why I call it a game. But let's also say, Joel, that the bill also had the Pledge of Allegiance in it, that you may do that. And by the way, they also had in it a clause that is protective, not under federal law, but under state law, that you can't be sued for this. And I think the people in North Dakota are sick and tired of the fact that these fundamental values that America was built on, that our Constitution was built on, many of these fundamental things that we make decisions on, all of a sudden are going to be shoved out of public square. I think they want them back. I think now that we're divided as a country, why shouldn't we, every school, say Pledge of Allegiance in the morning? And if that is offensive to you, you can opt out. You can walk
Senator,
out.
I want to. You've got to get back in committee, as you stated.
Yeah,
I
I
want
do.
to end this the way I began it. I want to thank you for coming on. I respect you immensely
thank
for
you.
coming on, and I look forward to more discussions like this.
Okay, be blessed, Joel.
Yep.
You know, I do appreciate her coming on my radio show, and I do appreciate having the opportunity to share that here on my TV show. A couple of points that I want to bring up in there, though. I don't know anyone that would find it offensive to say you shall not murder. I mean, I don't know anyone that would find that offensive. I don't think that anyone would want anyone to live without that being a rule that you live by. Now, they don't adhere to it, they don't follow it, just like they don't do many commandments. But I don't know anyone that would find these things offensive. Which version? Well, which version do you put up on the wall? I mean, right? Which version do you put up on the wall? That's a fair question to be asked. One more thing. Fundamental. When you talk about the fundamental right, I believe that all religions then will have that right. This is unconstitutional. This is going to get challenged. We're going to spend money in the courts. And quite frankly, I don't think I was playing a game when you asked someone to put something up on the wall that has 10 commandments on it and they can't recite them. We'll be back with more as we go down the road.
Capital City Restaurant Supply is your one-stop shop for quality restaurant products for the large to small kitchens. Commercial-grade restaurant and bar supplies, limb game processing equipment, refrigeration, dinnerware, and smallware. We sell everything including the kitchen sink from trusted manufacturers for the chef and all of us. Open to the public since 1971, we are veteran-owned and North Dakota proud. Let us take care of your restaurant and home kitchen needs today by visiting us at 1414 Interstate Loop in Bismarck or on the web at capitalcityrestaurantsupply.com.
Heroes and Icons is now Cozy TV. Don't worry, you'll still get your favorite Beck News programming without changing the channel. Real people, real news, Beck News.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
There's nothing more important than family. And at Prairie Rose Family Dentists, we get it. That's why we have more locations, more dentists, specialists, extended hours, pediatric clinics, and even emergency appointments, so you can always be seen. Book your appointment today at prairierosedentist.com. Prairie Rose Family Dentists. We are family.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Pub 21, your one stop for fun, drinks, and food. Our spacious facility provides COVID-safe fun for you and all your friends. With nightly bingo and specials, you can be sure there's something to do for everyone. If you're staying in for the night, we've got you covered just across the way with Pub 21 Liquor. We have a wide variety of options, from wine to whiskey and everything in between. Stop in today at 1014 South 12th Street in Bismarck to see what all the buzz is about. You won't be disappointed.
It's good to have you still going down the road with us. There's a lot of more things we're going to cover today. One of those is a bill that Representative Zach Ista put in. Representative Ista is from Grand Forks in District 43. I always like giving the town rather than the number, because I think if you said District 43, most people would go, where the heck's that? So here's where it is. It's in Grand Forks. But his bill 1435, House Bill 1435, his bill is to grant continuing health care coverage to spouses and dependents of officers killed in the line of duty. Now remember, I said Grand Forks, and it isn't going to take long for you to connect what happened in Grand Forks to the reason for this bill. Let's bring them in. Representative Ista, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks, Joel. Good to be here.
So, you know, first off, Officer Holte, tell the story of what happened in Grand Forks.
Joel, Officer Holte is a true hero. He really represents the best of what North Dakota has to offer. Not only did Officer Holte serve with distinction for the Grand Forks Police Department, he was also a member of the National Guard. But last spring, tragedy struck our community in Grand Forks. It struck the Holte family. He was tragically shot and killed in the line of duty, leaving behind a young family, a wife and a child. And when tragic events like that happen, I think it's a good time for our community and our state to reflect on what can we do to really support this family and other families like Officer Holte's who might face this tragedy. We know at the end of the day, there's just nothing we can do to completely eliminate the risk our heroes out there in law enforcement and fire face. So what I think we can do is make sure that if these tragic situations happen, that we have some protections in place for the family, and that's what my bill aims to do.
Just for the record, you know, all of these lives, you know, they matter to all of us. These men and women that fall in the line of duty. The Holte family has a real connection to me and my family in my area. Pete Holte raised, you know, they came originally from the Matador area. I shouldn't say originally, but when his grandpa was working for U.S. West, and so everybody in our area knows the Holte family. They know exactly what happened, and it was a kick in the guts, not just to Grand Forks, but to all of us. A lot of people, Representative Ista, are going to look at this and say, really? Why do we got to pass this? Isn't this happening already? Why wouldn't this be happening already? You must be getting some of that.
Yeah, Joel, I think there's a lot of public support for a bill like this. The Grand Forks Herald just had a nice editorial yesterday urging us to support this bill here in the legislature. And this wouldn't be a unique provision in North Dakota. If we were to pass this bill, we join about 17 other states that run the gamut across the political spectrum in passing legislation like this. So I think it's a common sense idea. It's got bipartisan support on the bill. I'm proud to have lawmakers from both parties in both chambers, especially my colleagues up in Grand Forks, on the bill with me. So I think we have some momentum. I think we can get it done, and I hope we do. I think it's the right thing to do for the families of our fallen heroes.
I don't mean to cut this thing down to dollars and cents, but usually there's a fiscal note associated with it. Is there one with this piece of legislation?
There is, Joel, and it's one of those that I'm sure you know well. It's hard to pinpoint what the dollars and cents are. According to at least one source, in my entire lifetime, we've been fortunate to only have 10 line of duty deaths among police officers in the state of North Dakota. And no doubt each one of those statistics is a tragedy for a family, but I think it does show that on the affordability front, we can afford this. It got an actuarial review from North Dakota Public Employees Insurance Program to the extent it impacts members of that insurance plan, and they found it would have minimal impact. The Public Employees Benefits Committee unanimously recommended passage of the bill. So we're going to figure out a way to finance this. There's many different options. I think one of the leading contenders is let's just extend that state coverage to these spouses, these children. That's already a no premiums plan for state employees. And that spreads out the cost a little bit, because a town like Grand Forks, a city like Fargo, they can probably absorb these costs with minimal impact on their budget. But if it hits a place like Stanley or Colfax, you might be looking at a little bit tougher hit for those political subdivisions. So we're going to find a way to make this workable for everybody.
Well, and I would add that the state health care plan is one of the best plans in all of the state of North Dakota. So if you can tie it into that, perfect. Plus the actuarial data when it comes to the state health care plan, the amount of numbers in, the amount of risk, you're not even going to notice this. Unfortunately, having to do it is the big issue here. You know, when you look at this, I mean, you're serving from Grand Forks and you got a D behind your name. That means that you got a couple strikes against you right off the bat. Do you have bipartisan support for this bill?
I do, Joel. If you look on the bill, we've got lawmakers from both parties in both chambers. Representative Emily O'Brien, a Republican from Grand Forks, has been key in this legislation. So is Senator Scott Meyer. Representative Pat Heinert from the Bismarck area, who's had a career in law enforcement, is supporting the legislation. Representative Gugasberg from Fargo, who himself is a firefighter and knows full well the risks associated with that line of work. So I think we've got a good coalition of support. Those that have direct connections to the law enforcement community, those that have a direct connection to Grand Forks, where the most recent tragedy happened. So I think we can use that momentum to get this across the finish line.
Oh, good job. I mean, good job. I know that this hasn't been your career so far, and I realize it's a part-time job, but this is a good piece of legislation, and one that I think everybody who's watching us go down the road needs to pick up their phone and call legislators and say, hey, get behind this, support it. Again, it's House Bill 1435. And I'm not trying to make it sound like this is about just the Holte family. Unfortunately, as you pointed out, it's about more families than that. But I got to ask, have you had an opportunity to speak to the Holte family about this piece of legislation?
Joel, and again, this is where I thank my colleague, Representative Emily O'Brien. She's family friends with the Holte family, and they don't need to be thrust into the political arena. They've certainly had enough heartbreak and tragedy in the past year. So it's not about making the Holte family into a political prop, but Representative O'Brien has that existing relationship. I've talked to extended members of the Holte family who are supportive of the legislation, but let's let the family grieve. Let's let the family stay out of the political arena. You'll remember, Joel, in the governor's State of the State address this year, he had a very nice tribute to Mandy and to Officer Holte, and I think we can let that stand and let the Holte family stay out of the arena.
Way to put it. I mean, great job. And you're exactly right on that as well. Where does the bill sit now? I got 30 seconds left. Where is the bill in the process right now?
It's had a hearing before the Political Subdivisions Committee. I got some marching orders from that committee to look at some of those funding sources we talked about. So we're preparing amendments, and we'll get it back to the committee as soon as possible, and hopefully get a vote out with a favorable do pass recommendation and bring it to the House floor.
Oh, hopefully. Good job. Way to go. This is how good things happen. So good things happen during a bad situation. Representative Ista, thank you. Thanks for coming down the road with us.
Thanks, Joel. Anytime.
When we come back, we're going to visit with somebody who knows about childcare problems. And really what we want to talk about is that gender gap when it comes to the workplace and other things. So stick around. More coming your way as we go down the road.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
In southwestern and south central North Dakota, on any given day at any given moment, a Dakota Community Bank and Trust customer is logging in or signing on to do their online or mobile banking. We believe that community banking can blend both the past with down-home customer service in-house and the future with modern banking conveniences and technology for our customers anywhere, like here or here, all while honoring our long-standing tradition of community-first oriented banking here at Dakota Community Bank and Trust.
Everybody needs an off-season, but our announcers have a tough time slowing down.
Hey, do you mind if I practice a little bit? Right, I'm really big man. Johnson holds, shoots, he scores!
Incredible! For the second time today, Brent has jammed the printer.
Lowry's third caramel roll of the day. That's a bold move.
And he drains one. Blind squirrel finds a nut. And back to normal.
Beck News brings you real people and real news. Every weekday on KNDB, KNDM, and KRDK. Start your evening with the Dr. Duke Show at 4. Take a fresh look at current events with Ladies of Another View at 4:30. Go down the road with Joel at 5:30. Watch No Apologies with Becker at 9. Cap off your night with No Filter with Debbie at 10. Beck News. Real people, real news.
The professionals at Superior Glass provide residential and commercial glass installation and repair services in central and western North Dakota. Superior Glass is your source for stained glass projects, mirrors, windows, touchless and automated entry solutions. Stop by and see us at 3323 East Broadway in Bismarck or call us at 701-258-5600. Superior Glass, where you get superior service for less. Bye for now.
It's good to have you going down the road with us yet. I get a chance to introduce you to someone that you're going to enjoy. Victoria Pelletier is a best-selling author, speaker, and corporate executive who has become a national thought leader on diversity. That's the key word there, inclusion and gender equality in the workplace. Now, you're listening to someone and you're visiting someone with someone who's got 5 granddaughters, 5 sisters, and a mother who took a backseat to no one in the workplace. So what Victoria has been working on is very important. By the time she was 24 years old, she was COO of a multinational corporation. And so I'm not going to age her and date her on any of this, because when you see her, you're going to find out she's a lot younger than me. So Victoria, good to have you going down the road with us.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
The reason that we wanted to talk to you was childcare problems and what's happening under this COVID crisis. I'd like to start there. Can you describe to people what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's incredible, quite frankly. I mean, now going a year into this, we're seeing parents, predominantly women, having to make some decisions significantly impacting their career, given the weight of the home care, child care that they personally bear. And the impact that that's expected to have is a step back 2 to 10 years in their career by stepping back right now. You know,
and I do this often, so I'm going to abuse it again. and my daughters can just get mad at me. But I'll take my eldest, for example. She's an attorney. She and other, she's a partner in a law firm. She has 3 kids. And so during this time, she's had to work from home. At times, judges have told her she has to be in that courtroom, and she can't find health care all the time. She can't. And it comes down to, do I get in trouble with my law firm, or do I do what's being asked of me? And I don't know how you juggle all those balls.
Yeah, it's a challenge. You know, I've had this philosophy for a very long time with my team that there are no schedules, there are just deliverables. I mean, in your daughter's situation, that's a challenge. You got to show up, you're representing someone in court, you need to be there. You know, I serve clients, and so you're often at the whim of them. But the reality is, from an employer perspective, that is how we should be looking at it, creating flexibility for our workers, and particularly, you know, men and women. I don't want to say it's only women who are bearing the brunt of this, but significantly so. When you look at December, almost 100% of the job loss rate was actually women, you know, who were having to take that step back.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to look at, you know, flexibility and much more of a focus on outcomes, you know, for those who need to be at home.
See, my take on all of that is that, first off, women had to break down the door. But then business itself, I mean, you've been on the board of many big corporations. You've been very successful in the world of business. But business, it seems to me, finally woke up and said, if we're going to succeed, we need women in the workplace. And so how do they come back from what you just described happened in December?
Yeah, so a number of things. And it's so disappointing for me because we've started to actually move the needle much more significantly. As you shared in my intro, I've been an executive now for over 20 years. You're right, you're aging me. And doing this, and I've long since been the only woman at the table. The S&P just reported for the first time it has every single one of the companies listed on its exchange that has at least one female board member. The NASDAQ is taking a step around diversity around their boards. So we've reached this point, and we know that I shouldn't have to say why diversity matters. The reality is it's actually good for business. It drives both top and bottom line in terms of productivity and engagement. So this is going to have a significant impact. So companies are going to have to take bold action demonstrably to create programs to re-enter women and men who've chosen to step out of the workforce to handle this right now, and to take action around creating, not only at the top levels, but very much at building a pipeline for it, of creating diverse talent across all areas of their business.
So this is an aside, but you're visiting with an old college football ref, and I got to tell you, when I see a woman or more women refereeing professional football, I smile. I think of my 5 granddaughters, so I smile. That's a workplace. That's a job. That's a change like you just described. So let me ask you this. You're in that boardroom. I'm going to put you there right now, and you say we have to have a fundamental change. What would the motion you would make to that board be? What would that fundamental change that you would offer be?
Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword when we're imposing requirements and metrics around it. But the fact is, we've talked about it for decades, and there hasn't been significant movement. So I think we need to create these bold moves of stating that there must be a certain percentage of diverse faces around the table, and not just faces. I mean, I'm talking diversity from all sorts: gender, race, ethnicity, sexuality, right? The lived experience that every one of them brings to the table brings significantly better innovation and problem solving, a reduction in risk oftentimes when you look at the board level. So they're going to need to set some targets, and they're going to need to hold their recruitment team and those around the table accountable for delivering them.
So you mentioned where we're taking a step back during this COVID crisis, and I can see it. I see it in my workplace. That being said, does it come back? Are we just waiting for that herd immunity to happen, and the very issues that we're looking at become issues that go away?
I'm afraid it's probably going to take a little bit longer than we would hope. We've gotten to the point where we're at now. Women, however, still only 76 cents on the dollar compared to our male colleagues. So we still had, challenges to begin with. So it's going to come back, but to get back to pre-pandemic gender parity and more diversity in the workplaces, we're going to have to take even greater steps and actions again, for re-entry programs around building the right kind of talent slate from a recruitment and sourcing perspective to present to those that are hiring.
So this doesn't have to do with childcare, I realize, but in a way it might. But has the workplace changed? When you're sitting in that boardroom, is there a realization now that you can get productivity out of any employee from their home? I mean, I've been telling people the last thing in the world I'd want to be right now is someone who holds a lot of office space, because I don't think those slots are going to get filled as easily. My wife being a perfect example, she's the president of hospice and home health for CHI. So I don't think she's ever going to work outside of the home again. And so is that a benefit to women or to employees at all as a whole?
I think it is, and you're absolutely right. There's going to be a new definition of normal. Might call it abnormal, but at some point it will become the new normal around looking at hybrid work environments. I don't think you're going to see any company that's going to move back to 100% bricks and mortar in office, short of manufacturing or others that need to be there. So this is here to stay, number one, but it does bring significant benefit for not only the employers, but the employees. Employers, we've actually seen a significant rise in productivity. So it's been great. Now, there's stressors, there's other things that come because of the dynamic we're in right now. But from an employee perspective, it will create flexibility. I think we do want to go back and see people outside of the square boxes that we stare people in and through WebEx or Zoom. We do. But again, flexibility, much more of this work-life integration. So I think we should see it as a positive. But employers are going to need to look at doing things differently. And as it comes to childcare, what I'm actually seeing is flexibility in creating these temporary childcare programs where they're buying hours of childcare that their employees can flex with to allow them to give much more optionality for them to be able to meet the expectations and the deliverables they have.
So in the minute that I have left, I mean, home base in Western Canada, home base in Toronto, home base in New York. You've gone where the work wanted you to go. For me in the Midwest, I've been on national TV with NBC, with CBS. This whole COVID crisis, because of what we're doing right now, has opened windows up for me in the standard of how you do media. I mean, I wouldn't normally get to visit with you in the way I am right now. Does that stay? When this is all over, maybe that's a self-serving question, but does that stay the way it is now?
I think it does. I think, we're looking at the way work gets done, who's doing the work and where it gets done in a very different manner right now. I spent 220 days on the road just a few years ago traveling to see clients, but it limited how many others I could see. So I think the reality is we worked fairly effectively this past year in this environment, here to stay.
Okay, so a little bit of time left. Where do they find your work? Best-selling author, where do they find it?
Find me at victoria-pelletier.com.
Okay, it's that easy. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, and bad part is we got your phone number. We might do it again. So thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk with Mike Rothschild. He's an expert when it comes to QAnon. Let's visit with him right after this.
Howdy folks, it's the County Cafe. I reckon it's time you're due for a hearty meal. So saddle up for the day with one of our Hey Bossin' breakfast homemade soups. Fill your grill at our salad bar, sink your teeth into our famous County Line burger and barbecue ribs. Top it off with spur rattling pie with a calm roll that's sure to put a smile on even the toughest outlaws. Shake the dirt off the boots each night and warm up with the gang. Tell them about it, Stacy.
I can't wait to see you at the County Line.
Since opening in Hebron in 1940, Dakota Community Bank and Trust has been your hometown bank. Our mission has been to provide modern banking convenience with old-fashioned hometown service. We've grown with the communities we serve through year-round events, countless sponsorships, and nearly 7,000 hours of volunteering each year. Learn more about our 80-year history at dakotacommunitybank.com.
Capital City Restaurant Supply is your one-stop shop for quality restaurant products for the large to small kitchens. Commercial-grade restaurant and bar supplies, limb game processing equipment, refrigeration, dinnerware, and smallware. We sell everything including the kitchen sink for trusted manufacturers for the chef and all of us. Open to the public since 1971, we are veteran-owned and North Dakota proud. Let us take care of your restaurant and home kitchen needs today by visiting us at 1414 Interstate Loop in Bismarck or on the web at capitalcityrestaurantsupply.com.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Beck News brings you real people and real news. Every weekday on KNDB, KNDM, and KRDK. Start your evening with the Dr. Duke Show at 4. Take a fresh look at current events with Ladies of Another View at 4:30. Go down the road with Joel at 5:30. Watch No Apologies with Becker at 9. Cap off your night with No Filter with Debbie at 10. Beck News. Real people, real news.
We get a chance now to visit with Mike Rothschild. Mike is an expert when it comes to QAnon. Pre-order his book. I'm going to say that in the beginning, and then we're going to make sure we say it again in the end. His book on QAnon is The Storm is Upon Us, How QAnon Became a Movement, Cult, and Conspiracy Theory of Everything. And that's the key word there. Mike, good to have you coming down the road with us.
It's nice to be here.
You know, it wasn't that long ago nobody had a clue what QAnon is. And I would argue that there's a lot of us that still don't know what QAnon is. Walk me through that. If you had to express and explain QAnon to our audience right now, what would you say?
Sure. So my elevator pitch for QAnon is that it is a cult-like conspiracy theory that holds that a member of military intelligence is posting clues about an upcoming purge of the deep state on the message board 8kun. So there's a lot of other things there. I mean, there's many, many other aspects to QAnon, but the basics of it are that there is a prophesized great event that is always just about to happen, never quite happens, and unfortunately has really wormed its way into the minds of a lot of people as something that is real and is going to happen.
Oh, now you got to tell me. Prophesized great event. What?
Yes.
What? Give me examples of what they said was going to happen versus what actually didn't happen.
Sure. So QAnon began on the board 4chan in October 2017. And this anonymous poster was just one of many anonymous 4chan trolls who pretended to be somebody important. So you had White House insider Anon, you had FBI Anon, you had a highway patrolman who was intercepting trafficked children. None of this stuff was real, but everybody on 4chan on this particular board just went along with it. They enjoyed it. Q was one of these people, and the Q poster began life by predicting down to the day when Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and the people in their orbit would all be arrested. And Trump would signal this purge called the Storm on Twitter. Now, the prophesized date came and went and nothing happened. So you had the first of many, 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 many times that Q kicked the can down the road and said that what they predicted for this date was actually something else that would happen at another date, but you just had to hang on and trust the plan. So Q is an endless series of predictions of vague events that are always just about to happen, but never happen.
So the world is going to end. I mean, today is the day the world ends. Today is the day that the world explodes. Today, I mean, so it's that ridiculous is what you're telling me.
Right. It is the same kind of prophecies that drove the Millerites in the 1840s or drove the Jehovah's Witnesses in the 1970s. This idea of a great world-changing event that you know about and that you can prepare for. Now, with Q, it wasn't so much the world is going to end, it's the bad people will be taken away and a new world, a utopia will be ushered in. That's what made it so attractive to people. It wasn't like we're all going to die. It was the people who deserve to die are going to die. And that's almost much easier to get behind.
So, and I realize there's exceptions to everything, like the question I'm about to ask you. There'll be exceptions. But by and large, give me an example of somebody who follows QAnon, who's somebody who looks and is walking around with that Q T-shirt on, like we saw at the Capitol. Are we talking about white? Are we talking about male? Are we talking? I mean, who is this person?
Well, the thing with QAnon belief is that it really now is anybody. When it started, the very beginning was this sort of young male 4chan dwelling culture. But very quickly, it sucked in a lot of baby boomers. Some of the early Q evangelists went on InfoWars, and they made a pitch for retired military professionals to come aboard and help them save the world through decoding these QAnon posts. So for the next maybe year and a half, it was a lot of boomers, primarily white, primarily older, primarily sort of middle class, upper middle class. Then when the pandemic hit, everything changed because suddenly you had a huge population that was home all the time, had nothing to do, and went down online rabbit holes looking for answers for what was going on. So you saw anti-vaccine people, anti-5G internet people, anti-Bill Gates people, some of these more traditionally female, traditionally a little bit younger, traditionally more left-leaning people got pulled into QAnon because they found these other groups that were already telling them things they wanted to know. So now a typical QAnon believer is almost anybody, which is very scary.
Is there organization to it versus going on the World Wide Web and putting your tinfoil hat on? I mean, okay, that's me saying that, not you. But is there organization to it? Are there meetings? Are there, how do they convey messages?
Sure. There is very little stratified organization to QAnon. It's not like a religion in that it has, clergy and ranks and all those things. The way they get together is digital. Even before the pandemic, there were very few in-person Q rallies. You'd have, 15 people show up at an Applebee's somewhere and talk about the Great Awakening. But it wasn't like Tea Party rallies where you had thousands of people. It was very digital. It was very online. Everything was done through social media, a lot through Facebook groups, a lot through Twitter and YouTube. So it was really sort of prepared. I mean, as much as something with no organization can be prepared for when the pandemic hit, and then suddenly everything was online all the time. The groundwork was laid there for new people to walk into it and to find something in it that appealed to them.
So I have to ask you, did Donald Trump know about this? Was he able to use that as a base and, that went underneath the radar of what I would call normal America? So Donald Trump knows there's that group out there that really is anti-government, anti-everything, waiting for the world to change, waiting for all this. And I'll use code words, that he has a way to connect with them because he knows about this group.
Yeah, I never try to psychoanalyze Donald Trump. I think that's a losing battle. But I think the people in his orbit absolutely knew what it was. I think his social media guy, Dan Scavino, would constantly throw out little head nods and winks to QAnon, would share QAnon memes, would throw pictures out there that I think he and his people knew Q people would decode and look at for answers. So I don't know how much Trump really knew or knows about anything, but I think the people in a position to influence him in terms of his social media diet absolutely knew about it. He was retweeting QAnon believers 2 weeks after the first Q drop. He retweeted that MAGA accomplishments list that was put together by somebody who'd already been blogging about how great QAnon was. So I think the people putting this stuff in front of him absolutely knew what it was and knew that they had a potential voting base here. And I think they exploited it very, very effectively.
Let me give you my bias, which it isn't much of a bias. It's factually true. There were a lot of members of QAnon that were at the rally on January 6th that he fired up. He fired up and he got them to go down to that Capitol, and his surrogates even took it a step further. When we talk about trial by combat, like Rudy Giuliani said, and you get them fired up that way, and they're already a group that believes this, is that. How many people do you think were QAnon members there or believers when they stormed that Capitol?
I think that we certainly saw, the guy in the Q T-shirt. We saw the Q shaman. We saw the guys shouting Q slogans when they were destroying camera equipment. I don't know exactly how many would say, under questioning that they believed in QAnon, but I think a lot of them, in fact, probably all of them, believed in some of the mythology of QAnon, this idea of the deep states, of the trafficking rings, of the global bankers who are running everything, of this sort of secret war being fought between good and evil. That's basically just baseline conservative dogma right now. That's not the fringe. That's mainstream.
One more quick one. Should America fear these individuals, not just their policies and what they might do to the country and its governance? I'm talking about physically fear these Q members.
I think that if you have somebody in your life who is really, really devoted to this and has been expressing violent ideation on social media, I think you need to take steps to protect yourself. Whether that's cutting that person out of your life, whether that's notifying the authorities, whatever. I don't fear that like Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to suddenly enact a QAnon coup from inside the House. I don't see that happening. But these are people who are gaining positions of power, who are gaining influence, and their mythology is becoming completely enmeshed with the GOP. So yeah, I think we do need to be extremely concerned about QAnon, about the violent ideation in the movement. This is something that we all need to be taking extremely seriously.
We're going to end this the way we started. Mike Rothschild, pre-order his book on QAnon. The Storm is Upon Us, How QAnon Became a Movement, Cult, and Conspiracy Theory of Everything. So there it is. Mike, thank you. Thanks for taking time with us.
I'm happy to help.
You bet. When we come back, some closing comments as we head to our last little part of Down the Road.
There's nothing more important than family. And at Prairie Rose Family Dentists, we get it. That's why we have more locations, more dentists, specialists, extended hours, pediatric clinics, and even emergency appointments, so you can always be seen. Book your appointment today at prairierosedentist.com. Prairie Rose Family Dentists. We are family.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Rush hour traffic in North Dakota, it's almost unheard of, Noah.
I'm speechless. It's something you just don't see around here, especially at this hour of the day.
Brian, can you say anything from your perspective?
Guys, I can. All this traffic is because some doofus drove off the road.
Doofus? Well, let's hope you can help him out of there. No. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
All right, great job.
Yeah, that went very well.
The professionals at Superior Glass provide residential and commercial glass installation and repair services in central and western North Dakota. Superior Glass is your source for stained glass projects, mirrors, windows, touchless and automated entry solutions. Stop by and see us at 3323 East Broadway in Bismarck or call us at 701-258-5600. Superior Glass, where you get superior service for less. Bye for now.
Now is the best time to plan for your 2021 farm equipment needs. North Dakota-based Summers Manufacturing is currently offering early order savings. Take advantage of big savings on North America's broadest tillage line, including the Super Kohler Samurai and the innovative VRT Renegade, as well as the best built, best backed land rollers in the industry. Talk to your Summers dealer today or go to summersmfg.com to learn more about early order savings available on all Summers equipment.
You know, it's always fun going down the road with you. Last night, the House Republicans, now I'm talking in the United States Congress, led by Kevin McCarthy, he's the minority leader, they had a caucus, and they got together, and they had some things they had to settle. Liz Cheney, the number 3 person in that caucus, Dick Cheney's daughter, and a congresswoman from Wyoming, was under fire. And she was under fire because she voted to impeach President Trump. She said that he riled that crowd up, he caused the insurrection, and he deserves to be impeached because of it. And so they voted. They voted whether or not she can stay in leadership. And what they did was they voted by secret ballot. Nobody could tell. Nobody could tell exactly who was voting one certain way, right? She won. She won 2-1 in a very conservative and a caucus that embraced and loved Marjorie Taylor Greene. Another subject for last night, a congresswoman from Georgia. You've seen it. It's playing all over the national media. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Q supporter. You just heard us talking about QAnon. She's Pluto. She is way out there. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be the face and the voice of the Republican Party for a long time. It isn't going to be Liz Cheney. It's not. That's the voice of reason. You know, the Democratic Party has been pushed to where AOC is the face of the Democratic Party. Well, that's not true. It's more like a Liz Cheney. But you know what? Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be the face and the voice of that caucus for a long time, because she's not going to go anywhere without a microphone being put in front of her face. And when you say the things that she says, you get what you're going to get. And they supported her last night as well. They didn't pull her committees. Good riding with you, folks.